I want to talk about materialism very briefly here, I think. I've been watching a couple of videos recently on YouTube, one involving Matt and John on Holon's network, and I think To Be Serious is also involved in that, Karen. So, and that got me thinking about materialism, so I'm not quite sure what I think about it really. I mean, partly I have some misgivings about its use as a term, because I think it's really hard to use the term material and materialism without it being kind of covertly loaded with all this historical baggage, really. Inevitably, it's something that well, it seems to be inevitable that we have kind of moral relationships to it, which colour the use of that term as a descriptor of an approach. Certainly, it always seems that when we're talking about material, it's almost as if crude is the word crude is being whispered ahead of it. Crude materialism, as if descriptions of experience, descriptions of the environment, descriptions of the physical world, which rely on descriptions of matter and the material world. And I don't mean that in a Madonna sense. I mean it in terms of the physical description. Ones which kind of rely on an understanding of something called matter and materiality are somehow sullied or contaminated. I mean, it seems to be following a kind of Judeo-Christian logic of fallen flesh to me. I don't know if that's. I know that doesn't appear in any of the language. It just feels like that to me in some way. That referencing to matter and materiality, it seems to carry with it this whole stuff to do with the solid material body and the solid material world as being somehow fallen and somehow inadequate to the explanation, as if matter and materiality is too easy. It's too available to provide any kind of real explanation of the world. And if we want to gain a better understanding of how the world works, we have to somehow transcend material, or we have to somehow step outside of the material world or go beyond it in some way and look for explanations which are transcendent or metaphysical or something, or I don't know, but anyway, draw on some kind of language which doesn't have this materiality. And I think it's a real shame in some ways, for several reasons. Firstly, I think that view of materiality is and matter is, well, quite apart from those kind of historical precedents to do with fallen flesh, I think it's partly to do with when we think about matter, we think about the matter that's available to our hands and to our eyes, or it appears to be so available. But most matter isn't, so it appears. Most matter, material explanations cover all matter, not just the stuff of sensory engagement. But even the stuff of sensory engagement is deeply, deeply complex in a way which I don't think the apparent simplicity of materialistic explanations or the kind of condescension which applies to materialistic explanation really captures. You know, material is fantastic, and it isn't simple at all in any way, really. It isn't. I mean, I'm just looking around at this environment. I'm looking at trees and grass and clouds in the sky and cars on the bypass, and it's enormously sophisticated and in many ways incomprehensible certainly to my understanding. And I guess the fact that it is so ready to hand, you know, I don't feel any problems of looking out into the world and touching this fence and doing all those kind of things. So it has this patina of obviousness about it, which I think is a distraction. I think it's it gives the natural world and the materiality of the world an appearance of obviousness and of transparency and of ready-to-handness, which is belied as soon as you actually start thinking about what the material world is made of, if you like. So I think there is something really understated about matter in the first place. But also, I guess, and I'm stretching this a bit, there's a really interesting, to me at least, relationship between materiality and salience. I'm sure it can't be a coincidence that we use the word matter not just to mean substance, but also to mean importance. If something matters to us, that it appears on the horizon of our needs with a solidity and a necessity that the real object seems to have to us in the realm of the senses. So matter in that sense conveys for me a really important idea to do with relevance and salience and the necessity that, and the inevitability that all of our senses and all of our knowings touch down at some point on our sensorium and on our embodiment and on our human cognition and on the needs and the drives and the relevances and the importances and the salience and the materiality of those needs and of ourselves as kind of measures, really. I don't really know what if I've got to where I wanted to go with that. I'm not really sure where I wanted to go with it. But this kind of denial of materiality, or a consideration that materiality is being inadequate and as something to be gone beyond, for me, partly has this kind of pseudo-Christian ethic attached to it, in which to think about the material world is to think about fallen flesh, but it also, I think, has this reduction, so that materiality and matter is not considered because it's associated with a very particular understanding of matter, which is delimited in a way which is really unhelpful.